Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the A Collision with Purpose project under the spotlight. Here, individuals are allowed to explore themselves in pursuit of their purpose. I am DrLaxley Stephenson, and I'm your host. The A Collision with Purpose project allows individuals to pause, take a quiet moment and listen, be introspective, and engage self-reflection in pursuing their purpose to unleash possibilities with far-reaching implications for self and others. Today, the A Collision with Purpose project spotlight is on Dr. Christina Campbell. Dr. Campbell is an associate professor at the University of Cincinnati. She's the author of the ABCs of Negotiating and a founder of Academy 118, which is a professional development startup that teaches individuals of academic institutions and career professionals how to negotiate. She has a Ph.D. in psychology and teaches in the area of criminal justice and juvenile delinquency. Let us welcome Dr. Campbell to the A Collision with Purpose project under the spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Campbell, I am pleased to welcome you to the A Collision with Purpose project under the spotlight. I look forward to an engaging, insightful, and interactive conversation with you about a topic which is arguably one of the most consequential concepts informing how we function as individuals and ultimately what we perceive as our legacy.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's such an important conversation to have. And I am excited to share my personal journey and experience in thinking about my purpose and how I show up in the world.
Absolutely, because indeed that's what it's all about, how we show up in the world and the footprint that we leave behind. So, Dr. Campbell, today you will explore yourself in pursuit of your purpose. I will be asking you a series of questions relating to your purpose. Are you ready to do it?
Ready, 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 ready.
All right, ready, ready, ready. And that's what it's all about, right? So, given the consequential implications of knowing and living a purposeful life, I believe that a good place to start in any conversation about purpose is to define purpose. So I'm going to ask you to do so, but do it in a very general way.
Yeah, if I had to think about purpose in a general way, and I would say also a simplified way, I would say it's about being aware of what you are naturally curious about. And I believe that there is something that happens early on in childhood where we begin to have an affinity for something or several things. And it's in part about sometimes even knowing how those different things are connected to one another. But I think it really begins to start with this conversation around curiosity.
Dr. Campbell, I really like that you bring up curiosity in childhood, because that is where many adults have lost their way. They're
Mhm.
no longer curious about life. So that is an important piece of your definition of purpose, albeit in a broad way. So given your definition, would you say that it is important for individuals, you included, to have an understanding of their purpose?
I think purpose is ultimately the guiding force to helping us get clarity on the path we should take, the choices that we should make. It should help dictate what we say yes to and what we say no to. And so purpose becomes, I think, the understanding our purpose at least can become the ultimate goal to really being in alignment. I think there's something about being in the space you're supposed to be in at the right time. And I believe that throughout life, we're actually just passing through. And I believe that we all have a mission. And the goal is to be on the path to accomplish that mission. And that takes us being in alignment. And that alignment really comes from the clarity around knowing our purpose.
Clarity, knowing your purpose. Let's talk about your specific purpose or purposes. Can you share?
Yeah, I maybe quite a few years ago I want to say about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, I was very intentional with making a list of all the things that I was curious about, the things that I enjoyed doing, the conversations that I talked a lot about, or topics that I often discuss with friends and family. And I sat back to say, like, what do these things all have in common? I do juvenile justice research and I study delinquency. But I was asking myself, exactly what am I trying to do with that work? I often had conversations with my peers around finances. I often love to read books, self-help books around financial independence. I started off at a very young age having my own business. And I began to ask myself, what do they have in common and why do I do these things? What's the driving force? And at that time, I recognized that all of the things have freedom in common. I have a strong desire around this concept and idea of freedom. The work that I do in criminal justice and juvenile justice is really designed to help divert young people out of the criminal justice system. It is done in a way where I'm actually looking to do research that reduces sentencing disparities in the system. The work that and the books that I would read around finances were often about being financially free, having independence. And even now, the work that I do around negotiating is around leveraging negotiating as sort of one path to freedom. And so I feel like freedom was one of the things that was in common, even though the activities were different. I think this idea of freedom was like a common thing that would come up throughout all of the things that I was involved in. And so, with kind of seeing how these things were united, it allowed me to sort of even simplify what I think is a core purpose of mine. And that is helping set people on a path to freedom. And I've been able to do that throughout my own life, through my educational experiences, from also the work that I do with my current startup company.
No, freedom is such an important word in your story, important concept, I should say, because it's just bigger than a word. What brought it on? What got you there? This notion of
Yeah.
freedom.
Yeah. So I grew up in South Central Los Angeles at the first part of my life. And that was a very important experience because at the time in the 80s and 90s, there are a number of activities that would often have individuals having this experience with court systems and policing, and individuals would come in and out of the system. In a lot of the schools I was surrounded by, they had high dropout rates. Many people and peers even experienced teen pregnancy and so on. And I had recognized one early observation was that as individuals would come in and out of the system, when they would come out, they would end up much worse. And I'm like, why a system that's designed for rehabilitation tends to keep people in captivity even once they're released. And so I think those early experiences caused me to be a little frustrated about what was happening. Another big point where there was this great frustration was when I was able to use, and this is completely illegal, but I was able to use someone else's address to go to a school that wasn't in my neighborhood. And at that time, they enrolled me in regular classes. And then some parent told my mom, I want you to get your daughter in this program. Now, mind you, I was never tested to get into the program, but once you're in this program, they labeled you as honors. humanities. When I was in this particular track in the middle of the school, I had this abrupt change where all of a sudden I had access to the same teachers, but better curriculum, better books, better programs, field trips, and so on, all because of this new label. And I began to think about all the kids that weren't getting these experiences in school and how that would impact their success later on. But again, it created great frustration that there was something that was going to allow me more opportunity that wasn't going to be available for someone else. And so as I began to matriculate through high school and I applied to college, I was the first in my family to attend college. And there I recognized my peers and some of the early experiences that they had in their earlier years in school. Again, I was met with great frustration because of limited resources and access to educational opportunities, I realized like, wow, there's a lot that I may have missed out on. And so that led to even more, frustration. So there were these instances where I realized that while I was on this path trying to set myself up where I would live in a great neighborhood one day or have opportunities that maybe my family didn't have access to or didn't have, I realized along the way, all of the events that can lead someone to have less opportunity or less freedom. And so that has, again, been a common theme throughout college, as well as even throughout my professional career, on how do I live in a way that maximizes my opportunities? And how do I become more aware of disparities that are in place that sort of limit opportunity and freedom?
You talk about curiosity early in our conversation, and you sure have been curious, haven't you?
Absolutely. To the point where it's gotten me in trouble at times, but yes.
But mostly results have been good, right?
Yes.